Hello, my name is John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from the capital of Northern BC, the city of Prince George. And it is an amazing day in Prince George, a little bit on the hot side, around 34 degrees. Don't see too much of that usually, but as always, Northern BC, it's paradise at any time. So, and for all those people also watching from around the world, go to BC, and then particularly if you go to BC, come to the Prince George and Northern BC. I have a fantastic guest today, and a very interesting guest. Her name is Dr. Robin Jonson. Dr. Jonson, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Yes, you may call me Robin.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So, you're a medical doctor, and you have an interesting background. So tell me a little bit about, our guest a little bit about your past and your background, and how did you become a doctor, and those things.
Yeah, I grew up in Williams Lake, which is just a few hours south of us.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a town where it's very small, so maybe 12,000 people, and my parents are. My mother's Indigenous from the Carrier-Chilcotin and Chilcotin Indian bands, and my dad is Caucasian.
Yeah.
And he's French Canadian from Manitoba.
Yeah.
And we had this kind of quiet family home life, and growing up there in that town, it was always, I was a little kid that really enjoyed school and really had the support of family and family backing me with whatever I wanted to do. And it kind of became clear, like when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my mom had me tested at the school, and I was deemed as gifted, and she didn't want to move me higher into schooling to get me out of the age range of my peers, and so I kept with my classmates. And there was an experience that I had with a family doctor that I went in for a family doctor's visit for some belly pain, and I thought, this guy has a great job. Like, look at what is going on here. Like, he has a nice office. He's taking care of people. I feel like I wanted to take care of people, and that the way that he made the job look, it was like, I thought, this is the thing for me.
Was that the trigger?
I was 9. Yeah, it was the trigger.
Can you imagine? Was it Williams Lake where you grew up then? Because in the Chilcotin is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's between Quesnel and Williams Lake. Just as about 100 kilometers south of Prince George is Williams Lake, and Quesnel and Williams Lake, and right in the Fraser River, the largest river in BC, is located. What's the Chilcotin tribal community located in close proximity to the river?
And it's to the west of the river, so a lot of
to the west side.
And so the some of the Chilcotin bands are under a national government, but they have land that's to the west of that river, and like kind of on the way to Bella Coola.
How do they get is there a crossing there then someplace?
There's a couple, and so there's like some really well built up bridges, and the communities have always had that. So so everybody like traverses that for travel, or even in when my mom was younger, they had ways to get across there, and it's still like all of that land is like highly used for hunting and fishing and logging.
It's still part of the it belongs still to the Chilcotin tribal community. Or they have the rights to it, or something like that?
There's national government that has land rights to it, and so they negotiated for that, and now they're working on how to work on governing that land. So it's really interesting new law that's being formed.
A lot has happened in the last 10, 20 years, right?
10 years for sure.
And that's a good thing, right? So then you grew up in where did you get your schooling then? In Williams Lake?
Yeah, so I finished high school in Williams Lake, and I went to Victoria for an undergraduate degree in a Bachelor of Science.
UVIC?
At UVIC.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
How long were you there?
For 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, to get a degree.
Okay. So, and what degree did you get there?
The Bachelor of Science. So
that laid the foundation for UBC to go to the medical program then?
Yeah, yeah. And so you have to do some prerequisites. And so I was completing like English prerequisites and science prerequisites, the dreaded chemistry and physics prerequisites. And so we, as medical students, you have these this background and you go and you apply. And there's also like an admissions test that you complete so they can gauge your aptitude.
It's not easy, right?
No, this one isn't. It's also like controversial just because there's, when I was applying for medicine like 20 years ago, there was a definite disparity between the haves and the have-nots applying for medical school.
Oh no.
Oh yes. And so the application was, I mean, to even get to the point where I was applying, it was a big deal.
Oh no.
So being a kid who like didn't have a lot of money, or like I'd used loans to get through undergraduate degree, it was really it was really hard. And
Troubling.
so like this admissions test is controversial now because we're thinking that to correct like social disparities in who's providing medical care, to make it so that more cultures have access to becoming medical students, that making this admissions test where you have to travel to Vancouver, sit at the test for like twice a year, and it's getting to that place.
Is that still the case now?
So they're trying to make it in different medical schools that this isn't as much a big deal to need for most applications for lots of medical schools.
Yeah, because we have an university medical and teaching facility here, medical school here.
Mm-hmm. And so the students who are UBC medical students are all students that would have had to do this test. But there are other medical schools across Canada that have waived this test to make application for their students more equitable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's that like correction that allows for people who don't have money, who can't travel.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it makes it so that
still
they don't
a work
have
in progress then?
It's still a work in progress, and it's nationwide, like where, you know, you have people who are in the know about how maybe sometimes unimportant this test is as a gauge for how good a medical student can be.
Right.
This is probably not a good test to have, and
No.
it's very controversial now.
So is it federal or is it provincial?
It's I would say it's sort of like there's a governing body that oversees it, but it seems like federal. But there's United States students that take it, and so like the medical college admissions test it's not provincial. But the schools, each of them can write their own criteria for what a medical student needs to get in, and they don't need this.
So what, without getting into politics and all that, but one of the things, common sense, to me said that there is a huge shortage of medical doctors. So why would we want to make it more difficult? I'm not asking you the question, I'm simply saying it to myself, that is it something that even more so than ever before, to streamline that and to take those obstacles out of it? There is no better time than now to have people listening to that and saying, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that, so what's limiting is each university's funded spots for how many students that they can reasonably teach.
Right.
And so if we have like a set number of spots that the university can afford to train, I think that that's the limiting factor. It's the number of spots, and also like the downriver issue could also be if we flood the market with a bunch of doctors who are graduating, they're all competing for a set number of doctor spots and jobs. So it's got to be something that grows kind of like a little bit at a time. So it's a bit more
complicated than the obvious, right? That it would,
I think that like it definitely was like hard 20 years ago to be like the only Indigenous kid in my medical school class, and to be to go through the interviews that I did. I remember there was this notorious specialist. I won't say what his specialty is because it's that niche that everybody would know who he is. Yeah. And I don't know where he is now, but way back when, he was notorious for being so hard in an interview that the behavior was to intimidate and antagonize the applicant.
And he was tolerated.
He was tolerated. This was like, it was kind of like everybody's rite of passage to get through an interview with this individual. And the minute like I walked into his office, he like flips open my application. I could see how dismissive he wanted to be. Like, I'm not, you know, I didn't have like stellar MCAT scores, and I had the grades to make it into medical school, but you know, like, how did my application stand out from anybody else's? And so he was reading it. He's like, you only applied to one medical school. This is not usual, because everybody usually applies to a few and like tries to get in somewhere if they really want to be in medicine. And he's like, well, how come? And I said, well, I couldn't afford to go anywhere else to apply. He just I took the whatever momentum he had with that line of questioning, and he just realized who he was talking to.
Yeah.
And just, he was like nice, and just the interview like really changed tone. And I think he just realized like that he was the one who was holding the key here, and
the gatekeeper.
And I think he wanted to help me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So you did UBC, and then you went to Dalhousie University, a very, very well-known university, and you chose then the specialty of women's health.
I think that like it kind of was a little bit during medical school where I had gone all throughout my clinical rotations, and it was just, everything was so exciting, and I'm like, how do I choose any one specialty? Yeah. And the last rotation in my clinical rotation year, so like your third year just before you're like just finished, or like in the year before you're finished.
Already at UBC?
I was still at UBC, and I was at BC Women's, and I was up all night delivering babies, and I delivered so many babies, so many nights, and it was like the best thing I'd ever done. It was so fun. It was like so apparent to me that I really...
so rewarding.
It was so rewarding, and I clicked with the women as patients. I thought, this is like where I fit. Like
you were a natural. Right?
I felt like it. Like it felt like all of the other specialties that I'd tried on for size, because that's it's not the same. I felt like a square peg in a round hole, and it didn't jive until I got into that rotation. I thought, this is what I'm meant to be doing, and it was so exciting, but also like kind of devastating, because I'd gone through the rotations thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a family doctor, get to go back to Williams Lake. And the minute like you do a specialty, like that kind of like that training takes longer. It's 5 years of surgical training. It's a commitment. It's something that I knew it wasn't going to be as portable. Yeah. It's still portable, but it's not as portable as family medicine.
So what does portable mean?
It means like, so if I have a job, it needs to be mostly tethered to like me getting a job at a hospital, and having hospital privileges so I can still do surgery, and do night call. And family medicine, it can look like a bunch of different jobs, or you can just be in an office, not just, but like you can solely be in an office practice. And
it is portable, and you can be in different locations.
You can be in even small locations with family medicine, but like needing to do surgery at a hospital keeps you at a certain looking kind of size town. Yeah. And so I was thinking that this was all of a sudden like my life changed before my eyes. Like the minute I love this, I'm like, this is, and I was getting married, and my husband and I was like, he was already like family medicine, and like
he has the same name as you, Robert.
Yeah, Rob.
No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, they were so similar
Robin
names.
And Robin.
Robin and he was.
Is he a medical doctor?
He's a medical doctor. Yeah, and so he trained in family medicine and did some extra training in anesthesia.
Where did you meet him?
We met at a medical student and physicians conference that was for Indigenous physicians. Yeah. And so it was in Winnipeg, and he was presenting his research in diabetes.
Yeah.
And so he was he was a few years like further ahead than me in training, and was making like a definite name for himself. He graduated as the first Mi'kmaq like medical school graduate out of like Halifax's Dalhousie University. And so like he was and is a big deal, for
we're going to talk about him a little bit more, not too much, because I want to talk to him. No, I'm just saying that respectfully.
I'm just excited.
Because you guys are such an unbelievable couple that are so close in a number of areas. So I just want to talk a little bit more with you about your choice in terms of where did you want to go and what would it mean? Because if you chose, correct me if I'm wrong, women health, then the likelihood of staying close to your community would not be highly likely. You may have end up God knows where in order to get the benefit of the university ability, right? Or the hospital being able to do surgery. That's right.
That's what was devastating, was seeing myself like, if I love this surgical specialty, now what kind of town or what kind of job can I work in? And I am like a small town girl at heart, and I love a small town feel. I love being near my family, and it felt like that was in jeopardy from like loving this job. And so taking a chance on this job and like applying for it and getting my residency position, that was like a huge leap for me.
So now you're still at UBC contemplating all of this, and that would mean, do I go to Dalhousie to go that track? Because once you do, you then committed to that career path, and then hoping that would work for you? Is that?
Yeah, I was at UBC, and I managed to arrange a few last minute electives, which means that as medical students, you need to make yourself have a good looking resume, and so you need to make job experience happen. And these electives I managed to arrange last minute, and I got one that was for 4 weeks in Halifax. And I got another one for...
That's where Dalhousie is.
That's right, and another one for 4 weeks in Williams Lake. And so these last minute job experiences were like my bid at making a resume. And so my husband and I, we got married.
Were you married then, or when did you marry? Were you still in UBC when you got married?
Yeah, and so it was that August we got married, and then I went to do this elective for this job experience in September.
And September following August. Not much of a honeymoon.
We had, so we did lots of like bed and breakfasts in Nova Scotia, and we were like golfing and eating and enjoying beaches. It was the greatest. It was a great time.
But when you were at Dalhousie, where was Robert then?
He came with. So
both of you went.
We did. We both lived there, and we like. I was doing the elective. He was visiting family, and so we were just sort of living kind of almost a student life, and living in a simple apartment while I was doing this job experience. And it was fortuitous that I had this elective with two of the leaders at that department, and so one after the other of them were like impressed with me, made me like strong letters of recommendation. And I think it also helped that I felt like all of a sudden, like working with the people that were at Dalhousie, the docs that I was meeting, I'm like, you know what, I'm treated so well here. These people feel like family to me. It felt like I was fitting in. And so it's like that click where you're like, you know what, I'm now like the round peg in the round hole.
So important for you, right?
It was like what helped make the decision easy, because I felt like this is the job that I want, but this is where I want to do the job, like the location fit.
So then you chose the specialties in women health, like gynecology and another specialty, but
the whole job is like part of a few different things, and so So women's health and gynecology and like doing surgery, there's also like complicated pregnancies and maternal fetal medicine. And so like learning all of this is part of the 5-year residency.
The whole reproductive body, right?
Yeah, that part of like how our health works.
Yeah.
And so so you start like in residency. So I had applied to this job and I had gotten it.
Yeah.
And then we started the next year, and I had a couple of years of like, you have basic training where it's like simpler, and then pretty much you turn into the second year of training where you're all of a sudden they're like given a scalpel and told to like, this is how you do surgery, and
right.
you graduate up to that, but they definitely like start you doing surgery like fairly early at this school. Like that's what its reputation was,
wow.
Here's a grad and you're a year and a half ago.
They have an hospital attached to the university that they work with directly?
Yeah, Halifax is, they have the Dalhousie University, and all of the university professors that do medical training are affiliated with different hospitals. And so it's kind of like, it's set up a little bit like Vancouver's system, where you have like a major hospital that receives all of like the trauma, for example, and certain like it runs an emergency room, but the women's health runs out of a separate building, a separate hospital, and the women's and children's hospitals are like 2 buildings that are just adjoined.
Right.
And so they have a children's hospital there that's like really, really well done as well. But the women's hospital was where my basis of training was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so how long were you at Dalhousie to complete your...
I was their trainee for 5 years.
Yeah.
And so that encompasses like learning gynecologic surgery, learning ultrasound, and high-risk pregnancies, being up all day and up all night doing emergency surgeries at night and C-sections, and also like running clinics. And so in the women's clinic space in the main floor of the hospital or in the community, we were like kind of farmed out to other like clinical experiences where you would go and get job experiences working in other hospitals or other offices. Yeah. And so that just makes it so that like they were trying to make you like well-rounded, and so that when you graduate you have the skill to practice this generalist kind of job for this specialty. So.
And then Robert was there for the whole period with you, right?
Almost the whole period.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so when I was starting my training, I was pregnant with our first child.
Right.
And so I gave...
You have 3, right?
I have 3 now, yeah. And so Reese was born in November of my first year of training.
What year was that?
Like 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Reese was our first, and it was so busy, like having a baby and then a toddler during the training. Yeah. And in the like 4th year of my training, Rob was working and doing some locum work in the emergency department here, and it was also becoming clear to us while he was doing his locum work in Williams Lake in the emergency department that our son...
Now, locum is where if a doctor takes off for a period, they get somebody else to fill in for them. They call that locum, right?
That's right. So he was standing in for someone.
Yeah.
And so he was doing some emergency department work, and it was becoming clear to us. Up until that point, there was hints that Reese had special needs, and he had a speech delay, and we needed a speech pathologist, and the competition for access to this resource was really, really deep. Like we were not going to get him help in Williams Lake or in Halifax for at least a couple years. And so there was just a few phone calls Rob made while he was in Williams Lake, and they're like, you know what, we've got like OT, PT, speech pathology, pediatrician, like everybody's sort of here in the child development center, and we can help you. And he'll have like immediate intake, and so he was going to get immediate access to resources. And we made a difficult decision for Rob to stay in Williams Lake with Reese, and for me to like return back to Halifax and finish the last 15 months of my training alone.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you were on home stretch. It was a long way away from Williams Lake.
Yeah, well, we had like in training, you have like 1 week off every 3 months.
Okay,
and
well,
so we were using that to like fly to see each other.
Yeah,
and it was hard.
So how's Reese doing?
Reese is wonderful. Like he's oh my gosh, he's grown now, and
is he in college?
He did 1 year of college, and it was mostly to show him what his aptitude was.
Right.
And I think he's somebody who will always like just sort of work at his own pace, and he'll need some help, at least like trying to find his niche. And right now he's working at a job in retail, and it seems like I think he's trying on adulting for size.
How old is he?
He is 20 years old now. Yeah, so he's working in retail, and seems like he enjoys like that rhythm of life. But I think like the post-secondary education, I think he needs a break from that, and just to kind of do other things for a little bit.
Yeah, I had some challenges too. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. Was not good. No. ADHD, actually, So
I think so. Like Reese's things when he was little, it sort of came to a diagnosis when he was about 6. But we had hints before then that he had attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. And he was still delayed in his speech, but by the time we could kind of decide that we could get a pediatrician friend to give us some advice about starting him on medication, this was like something that was like it changed things for Reese.
Oh, absolutely. So fortunate that you were able to diagnose him and then find the help that what was available. So because that like in my case, I was born in 1940 in Holland, and that was during the war. So and it was pretty rough there in northeastern Holland. And my dad was in the Dutch army. The last time they heard from him, he was in Rotterdam when it was bombed. So my mother had 3 kids, and I was the youngest. I was born in November 1940, and then sister 1 year older, brother 2 years older, and and trying to keep the family alive for her with the 3 kids. Everybody was in the same boat, and things were pretty rough, and was a lot of things that we saw that we should not have seen. And and the kids, I was certainly affected by PTSD, in combination with ADHD and the inner child. I got counseling for the inner child when I was 58. The best thing I ever did, but very, very, really gets right down there, So, yeah.
I can only imagine how hard that must have been. Like my father's family was in Canada around the time of the war, but his father emigrated from Belgium before like the Great War. And it's it's huge, like how that affected families and the development of our country and immigration and survivors.
And not only the war, but also it upset whole families to how do you kind of bring things back together to a sense of normality, lasted long after the war, but in any event, what's the name of your other kids?
My other kids, Kyle.
So you have Reese is 20, and then?
Kyle's 14.
Yeah.
And Kelsey's 10.
Kelsey's girl?
Yeah, she's a girl.
2 boys, 1 girl.
Yeah. They're they're amazing. Just I think just because they are really independent and smart, and they're so loving. Like we're really we really feel like lucky to feel safe in our family unit, and I think my husband and I are like really careful to make sure that the kids always are protected and safe and comfortable.
Yeah.
You really want that for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, as far as ADHD is concerned, I call it the superpower. You know, and but it was still. It's all in my book. I'm going to give you a copy of it, signed copy, obviously. But you know, it was not until I was 57 that I found a book here. The reason that you know, we were liberated by the Canadians in 1945, and I always knew from that point forward I would go to Canada, the land of my heroes. And the other dream that I had is to do my own lumber mill. But the other problem that I felt I was a failure. You know, so that I failed grade 3, grade 7, and you know, and then got coveralls when I was 14. The choice was either to send them to the mentally challenged school or get them a job at 14. So I had got a job. School came out, and my parents had to do something with me. So I always remember my dad, and they were good parents, you know. So took me to you know, a clothing store, and he had to find me coveralls, and we, you know, because everybody had off in the summer, but I had to go to work that Monday following school after I failed again. So I got the coveralls, and they didn't even have the right size, so I had to roll them all the way up. The crotch was sitting about here. It was not cool. It's cool now, but it was not cool then. Yeah. And that's how I wanted to work, and became a furniture maker. And then, you know, so, and it was really not until I was in Books on 4th here at Books and Company, you know, that I picked up a book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction. I don't know why I did pick it up, and I looked at the book, and I thought, oh my God, about ADHD, that's me. And I bought a copy of it, and I wrote in it in Dutch because I was ashamed of it. You know, now I finally know who I am. And, you know, and then it took me, that was 57, then it took me another 5 years, and I had a good relationship with a family doctor, delivered our 2 daughters, and, you know, and I knew him well, and until I talked to him about it, and one day I went into his office, and he said, so why are you here, John? I said, you know something? I think I got ADHD. And so we sat down together, and you know, and he kind of had some knowledge about it, and kind of had looked things up, and he said, I think so too. And you know, so, and you know, then I was 62, and you know, and then it took me obviously another 20 years after that I always felt I had to talk about it. You know, and because I viewed it already then, now I finally had the answer, but it's a superpower because it allows me to do things that, you know, when I hyper-focus, I can virtually do the impossible. You know, so, and I really hyper-focus, and that's what I did. And then, but I felt I had to write about it, and the first time that I really was public about it, this was May 19th, May the 31st, 2019. I got an honorary doctorate from University of Northern British Columbia, and I incorporated it in my speech, and then I knew that I had to write about it, you know, and so I did, you know, so.
Well,
And
get
more
it therapeutic
and
to
more
get it
people,
out too.
virtually on a daily basis, Robin, I hear people saying, I gave it too, you know, and I did a presentation here, I don't know, about 2 months ago, and this was about 20 people from all across Canada that were here, and they were all people that were entrepreneurs or, you know, and so I did a presentation together with a couple of other people from the forest industry. They talked about lumber, and I thought, and I was the last speaker, and I thought, I talk a little bit about the forest industry, but I'm going to talk about my book, you know. So, and when I was sitting to one of the fellows next to me, and he must have been in his early 40s, and and he said, oh yeah, what are you writing? I hear you're writing books. I said, well, I write a book about this. And he said, I have it too. He said, I haven't told anybody. I said, oh, I'm gonna, so anyway, so then I was speaking, and he was okay with that. And I said, in fact, Andrew, sitting here, said to me today that he was diagnosed with ADHD. There was another person in those 20 that also said, hey, me too. So the frequency of occurrence is much more frequent now than first was anticipated. And, and then the book that came out yesterday officially, our friend Dr. Tracy Lotz wrote the forward and, did obviously a fantastic job. But I wanted to make sure that the book was of interest to a lot of people, and that it opened the door more in terms of understanding it. That I say the book in particular is not only for those that are affected by ADHD, but I say it is virtually impossible of not being affected by it, because in your circle, either direct, indirect, or in the place you work, you will encounter people with ADHD, and they are sometimes a little bit different in energy and all the other things that they have to, but you must read the book to get to know it, because of interest in the other one of understanding the people in your circle better.
I think that's so true. Just what it's taken and what we've learned having, like, parenting Reese and having the life with him, to sort of learn to be there for him, and to know, like, what he needs to be successful. Yeah. It's been really I think, like, one of the hardest, but some of the, like, most rewarding part of being his parent.
I want to give you a copy of the book for him too. But I'm an absolute classic case of ADHD. There's no question about that. And when I came off the bus here in Prince George, I wanted to go to Canada. I wanted to build a mill, but I also wanted to prove to myself that I can do it. So. But I left Holland with $150, one suitcase, 3 books, and a set of clothes, and I was going to build a mill. It was not a question of if, but when. And I had $25.47. I couldn't speak the language. I didn't know a soul, and I didn't have a job. And but my books, including Against All Odds, are not about hoorah, hoorah, job, but rather about that turned this into a benefit, and it surely is, as we can see in the friends that we already know, that it is a superpower. It can be unlocking that direction to knowing it, and then making some changes to the traditional,
Yeah, I think that any experience that we have with it, with Reese, I think we're always, his parents, and we're, like, lending support. And I think that his self-esteem has suffered from feeling like this has put him behind his peers.
Did me too.
I think that he's always like, anything that builds him up or makes him feel better about that, like, it would be a lot to him. But he's definitely somebody who feels very sensitive about this, and
I did too. I felt I was a failure. Even here, when I was here, I built already a mill in the 80s, and everybody said, oh my God, you're so successful. I didn't feel so. I felt I had a failure. It was not until in communication with, I was okay at the mill, but soon there were more than 2 or 3 people in the circle. I just froze. I could not communicate. And say, well, what happened to you then? Well, purely coincidental, I joined Toastmasters. And my ex-sister-in-law, kind of dragged me down there. Says, go to a meeting of Toastmasters. And I said, are they going to ask me any questions? They said, no, they're not going to ask you anything. You just sit there. And then I sat there and I watched all these people doing Toastmasters, and then somebody said, and John, you want to say anything? Maybe tell us who you are. And I said, you know, so I said, well, I'm who. So, and then afterwards I said to my sister-in-law, I'll never go there again. Mm-hmm. But then I went back again a week later, and then that was followed by 10 years of Toastmastering, and I became probably the most active public speaker in BC on Toastmasters. I'm a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level that you can be. Mm-hmm. It changed my life, and it gave me confidence, you know, so, and, you know, so.
Yeah, I think that that sounds amazing. Just to, I think the singular focus that I've experienced seeing what Reese is capable of, he is very focused on like his favorite thing at that moment and just expends so much energy like either perfecting it or learning about it.
Typical.
Yeah, it's amazing to see it.
These
Mm-hmm.
are the typical things that I do the same, you know.
Yeah.
So, and but the possibilities with that gift, it's a gift really. Mm-hmm. It's you know that you know the finding that direction. Actually, and I'm in the process. Again, you might think, "Oh, this guy's crazy." I wrote a book with the Against All Odds, and then I had to write the book, you know, ADHD Unlocked. I'm writing another one right now, and that comes out next July. And that is another thing that I believe is very important. And you touched on it in a way, you know, that finding your passion. Mm-hmm. And I was young when I found it. So were you. You were 9 when you and then you know, I wanted to be in the lumber business. You know, that's what I wanted to do. And you know, and then so the title likely will be is I just thought about. I told. You know, one of the fellows that works with me in communication, I said to him probably yesterday morning, I said, I found the title. Oh, he said, what is it? I said, well, we already talked about we're going to do the book on finding your passion. So the title likely will be something like that, Finding Your Passions and Living the Dream. Because that's how I look at it. My life is living the dream, that I enjoy every day that I go to work. Mm-hmm. I do. Not quite to the same level as it could be maybe always, but by 99% of the time, I love going to work. And I love what I'm doing. And then in the morning, I usually get up at 5:30 or so. I always make my bed. And then, you know, you know, because that, at least I feel that is the right start for the day. And at the end of the day, then I come to my bedroom to go to sleep, and the bed is all made, and it's, you know, it feels good. And then from there on in, you know, I even now probably work at 82, still work, you know, 10, 12 hours a day, you know, so, and I just love it, you know, so, and a lot of that is, and I do a whole lot of things, writing books and doing podcasts and having 5, 6 different companies, and, you know, I pretty much run all the time. I love it.
That's amazing. I think that also like manifesting enjoyment in like how your day is going to go, like you create like how positive that experience can be to go to work. Like I have like a few different places where I work, but my favorite is my office, where I mean I have amazing staff. I've hired them. I've handpicked them. Yeah. And we're like all like part of a team and so supportive of one another, and we're there to like be so efficient, and it's such a pleasant experience like to be part of that. And I think that that's I feel like it's manifested, like I've created that for myself. Exactly. And it's so positive. Yeah. And
it's living the dream in a way, right? And so I know so many people, Robin, and likely you do as well, that say, you know, I hate my job. Well, why don't you get another? Well, I can't get out because I need a paycheck and I need this. Can you imagine how that would feel to go to work? But a lot of people do. And a lot of times, and especially with young people, respectfully, you know, and my daughters were, the one daughter in any event, you know, didn't know exactly what to do. So she went to the University, UBC, and then had to make a choice in terms of what direction to go. And so we got somebody that she spent 2 days with to kind of find the direction that would be helpful. So she became an architect, and although she's busy as a mother, but that's the direction she took. So many times that, and that's the purpose of that book, is helping people to find that passion, either by getting exposure to it like you did in some form or fashion, and then have a good idea so you can focus your efforts in that direction, because you're going to spend a lot of your life in that place. But not only that, once you leave there and you go home, it affects everything that you do. It's critically important to find that passion. Right?
Yeah, it's hard for lots of people. I did try on a few different jobs before undergraduate medicine, and I had summer things where I did know with manual labor that wasn't my thing, because my brain wasn't being worked and I was bored with it, and I worked in a restaurant as well. And so I did have an inkling, that by the time I'd gotten into medicine, there is a definite sense that it's a calling, and like that the work was less work and more like, this is my career. Right. And that's what I think is different, is that there's work and there's a job and there's something that's monotonous or you don't enjoy. But sometimes when I'm like passing my day, like it flies, like it's so fast because I enjoy
Same
it.
as me.
Yeah.
And that's a good indication.
Yeah.
So you and Robert have an amazing relationship. So tell me a little bit more about Robert.
Yeah, he grew up in Millbrook, Nova Scotia. So he grew up on a First Nation and had a chaotic upbringing with the end result being, it being a miracle that he was interested in medicine and that he was able to go. So he was always a stellar student, but the bits around his life that were hard were really hard. And he was always a very dedicated athlete, and he played hockey. And so I think hockey was his release. And school was the other safe place for him. So as a student, he focused on being successful in the arenas that he could be successful in, or that he had somewhat control over. Mm-hmm. And so him being such a good student made it so that he leapt over a few grades when he was younger into by the time he was graduating high school, he was 16 years old. And so he graduated high school, he got into Dalhousie, he did a 3-year undergrad, a 4-year degree in 3 years. So he accelerated his first degree, and then he was able to apply to medicine at 19 years old. And he was such an amazing student. They gave him an application. They're saying, this is your ticket, like your card. We'll accept you this year. If you want to take a year off, you come back next year. They're thinking this is the 19-year-old. He wants to, go and have a gap year or travel. He didn't want any of that. All you can see if you're coming from, a life where this is your one goal that got you through some of the hard things.
Exactly.
That's what you're going for, and that's you're not going to stop for that. And
no.
So he just went right into medicine, and he in medicine was loving a lot of the parts of his training and enjoying it. I think he was really interested in some of the research aspects of it, and was trying to see maybe he would like to do dermatology, so a skin specialty. But I think in the end, applying to family medicine won him over, and he applied to family medicine and got a job in that, in training in Prince George here. So
he finished in Dalhousie virtually at 19. What did he say? Where did he go after that?
Oh, the undergraduate was a 3-year degree, but then he had to do a 4-year degree in medicine. So he was there
also
until 23.
Dalhousie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so he was there until 23.
Yeah.
And then he did a 2-year family medicine training program here in Prince George.
At UNBC?
It didn't exist then.
No.
Yeah. It was UBC's family medicine program that they'd farmed out students up to the north here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so he had his training here, and we were dating by then, and so I was a UBC medical student and just traveling between Vancouver to Prince George to visit. But he by I think his third year of medical school, though, he won a National Aboriginal Achievement Award. So it's a like national recognized award for an Indigenous person who has an extraordinary achievement. And so he was nominated by people close to him and educators who recognized what barriers he'd overcome to be in medicine and to get where he was. So it's still like an amazing thing that he's accomplished.
So today he works in Prince George or in the region as a medical doctor, or does he use some of the specialties as well?
He doesn't work in Prince George, so his GP anesthesia training lends itself to working in small hospitals, working and doing anesthesia in like rural and remote settings as well.
Anesthesia is where you
put people to sleep for surgery.
Very delicate, right?
It is. It's we joke about it being like 99% boredom and like 1% like crisis. My God, crisis.
Yeah.
And he loves it though, the adrenaline rush when he's like really working hard, or even it's a thinking person's job as well, and so like all of medicine you're thinking, but this is really like critical, like doses are very fine, and like the details are they're very detailed with this job, and he loves it. It suits his personality. He's very talented with like an automatic, I would call it like a recall like I've never seen. This person, I've joked with him, it's like that party trick where you open a book and you're like, what's the blah blah blah, and he can remember the page and reading that book. And it's amazing to me that he has that recall. But that's sort of like what he's like, this job is geared to that kind of level of recall. And if your patient is asleep but they're doing something where they're trying to die, he's the person you want, like that's for sure. Is somebody that you want there. At one point I got something and I had diverticulitis, and it was already approaching 48 hours, and that's really critical then, I believe. And so they had to do something like that. I remember the fellow that was, they said he's and how do you call it again? Anesthesiologist.
And he had a beard and everything. I thought, okay, whatever, so, but I was in so much trouble that, by that time but it's critical. So you guys live here in Prince George then, and then
and he travels to work. So I think some of the places he's really enjoyed working at. He travels to Duncan, and he travels to Yellowknife is another location. Oh my God,
that's far away.
Yeah, Yellowknife. This summer he's traveling to PEI, so we're going as a family with him. But he's working in PEI a little bit.
As a locum.
As a locum.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of other places. He's done a job in UVIC once. Yeah. And he's worked also in the north, like Quesnel, Terrace, Prince Rupert, and he's just traveled around. Yeah. But he likes that aspect of the job.
There's a shortage of those specialties, right?
That specialist is in deer supply in BC is. As a province, I think like BC doesn't have a competitive remuneration for payment for doctors in that specialty enough to make it so that
one of the underlying reasons?
Yeah, we don't compete against other provinces for.
Why? I didn't understand that.
I know they should make it equal across all the provinces, but this is something where like each province has its.
Doesn't make sense.
No.
So if you kind of, obviously we always say, and I always say, and everybody else does too, that if you don't have your health, you have nothing. All the other things don't matter. You have to try to maintain your health, live healthy, and then if you're in trouble, then hopefully you have access to people that can help you through that, or, but it appears like there is a lot of controversy around health in terms of some of the specialties is finding the employees. Like we employ at our operation close, I have 3 operations, one in Prince George, one in Vancouver, one in Houston, and then some other operations. So we employ about 400 people, but on our operations in Prince George, one of our mills employs at one shift about 35, sometimes 10 of them don't show up. Mm-hmm. It's a real problem, not unique to us. Mm-hmm. You know, I get the same, I fly a lot. You know, then the security line is not working. They need 3 lines. The people that only are there today are all on 1 line. Mm-hmm. I flew out of Vancouver last Sunday. The plane was delayed by 2 hours because they were short 1 pilot. Mm-hmm. And this is more frequent, and those are the obvious things, but the same in terms of on the medical side is finding the specialties. What's really the answer, I wonder?
Well, I think that there's a few different issues where how do you compete with a town like this that's like remote and it's northern? Yeah. How do you make it enticing for young doctors to practice in? Yeah. How do we
a medical doctor?
Yeah, a medical doctor. So like how do we hire people? I think that's an issue. And how do we graduate enough doctors to bring them here? I think the university, UNBC, is smart in having a medical school here because it aids in retention. Yeah. And makes it so people graduate and they're like, I remember Prince George, I worked there and I'm going to go back up there to be a doctor. And
yeah. But this is I said, the other half of the province, that's how I introduce it. The mm-hmm. capital is Prince George. And I always tell, you know, even when I introduce it a lot of times, I tell to my friends down south that 80% of the GDP is generated in northern BC. Don't forget about us. You know, we need funding for the critical services. Mm-hmm. You know, so and I say it tongue in cheek, but I'm serious about it in a way as well. It was quite a job to get the university here, freestanding one. But the other one, Robin, that as I look at it is that, you know, I used to go to my friend, the doctor, and other doctors, you know, and they're usually so busy that they have maybe 10 people sitting in their office. And then I go back now a few years, then my doctor had the file that was sitting on the counter, and I don't, fortunately, lucky me, it was mainly my ears plugged up or something like that, relatively minor. And then you wait, and then you spend 5 minutes with the doc, and then from there and then you're gone. It appears to me that a lot of that now, that waiting and the lineup is changing, where a lot more can be done on the internet. It does not have to be a physical meeting in a lot of cases. Is it all changing as to what is acceptable? And then the other part, in terms of some of the specialties, it's part of my book as well, where more and more people are looking at what they call micro-credentials, is saying that rather than to have to sit there to work on a specialty for 4 years, if we get to the micro-credentials, to the core of the specialty, and at least partially introduce those into the workforce and then further expand it, that's maybe a way, not only as it affects the medical side, but in many, many other areas, that is a way of saying, how do we quicker introduce those individuals into the workforce? And the other part about it is, you know, and that applies across the board, micro-credentials, but the other one is that how about ADHD? Not only HD, there are people that are slow learners because as a result of trauma of some sort or another that made them slow learners, or other reasons that they are not quite fitting in to where again, micro credentials where you can focus on those individuals and still bring them forward and bring them into the workplace and make them feel like, no different than you talked about Reese and myself. I had no confidence because I was a failure. And that's how I kind of looked at myself in a way. And I was ashamed saying that I had ADHD because I'm building a company and I go to the bank and say to the bank, hey, hello, how are you doing? I have ADHD, and say, well, goodbye. That's a mental issue, and that sort of a thing. Removing the stigma from that. And but in terms of learning in a general sense, micro credentials where we, rather than putting people in a position where they have to spend 4 years, it's making it narrower and focusing on the actual task and then expanding it from there, likely would be one step in the direction. And I refer to it in the book, and I talked to the VP of education at BCIT that are looking at those as how do we bring more people into specialties, not only medical but in other specialties, is by narrowing this into a smaller window.
Yeah, I think that there's innovations in medical learning that are making it so that we have a different model of training that looks different than when I was training at the beginning of my, in the beginning of my career in my specialty, and you did, core 3-month blocks, and you would just pass the time, and you would pass the course, and you would get exams.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
Right.
And that would be how traditionally that training looked, and how the competence by design works is that there's new even like surgical training programs are adopting this model where the learners are coming in and they're at a level where previously we might not have been teaching them higher level minimally invasive surgery, for example, something where it's like with a TV and a camera and all of that. And so this learner, for example, might be at a more junior level, but we're elevating them to a more senior level because they've shown core competencies. They've ticked the boxes, and we should let them do the next level.
Exactly.
Whereas maybe in years past, we might have held them back, and they would have been doing more like service-oriented of jobs to their work instead of like learning the actual like next advancement in their surgical skill.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to accelerate their medical training and make it so that there's a potential for them graduating maybe, I don't know about time-wise earlier, but they're going to like move through their skill set maybe a little bit more quickly. And I think it's an exciting and new way of training these specialists. So I think that it's just something that's become part of like UBC's movement for training in the last couple of years. And my department adopted it with like OBGYN trainees that are coming through the province. And so it's something where we have to see like maybe a 5-year training specialty from before can look like 4 years, or maybe it can look like or less. It would be like tremendous. But like I'm thinking of like all of the different surgeries that I needed to know to be able to do this job. Like to imagine somebody fitting that into a shorter time, I think it's possible, but they'd work like
that
really
would not
hard.
be a good example, because they're saying, oh yeah, I'm your doc, that I got a year's training, and you're one of my first patients. I would say I'm gonna pass.
Nobody wants to hear that. No,
but what I'm saying is that across the board, where we are so short on specialties, and especially the ones where you can kind of bring it into a shorter time span, that and under supervision, it would not include, in my opinion, surgery, but that there is maybe one way to deal with the shortage of skilled.
I've seen really talented individuals though that like had skills from like just being so assertive and having the ability to graduate their surgical skills. So I'm not sure what's not possible, but like the surgical training was drawn out for me in my experience because they had like a structure and everybody had to abide by it. And so that's just the way it was. But I think like way back when, maybe there was like a month here or like there that could have been dropped off that training. But and to go back to your other question about like whether or not some of the remote health or like access to care can be aided by telehealth, it's certainly something that changed and was the way that COVID affected that was something that we as doctors were probably trying to adopt in telehealth and trying to like get visits for patients that are remote through video. We were kind of moving to do that, but COVID just blew it right up because everybody was doing it. All of a sudden the province moved to making like a payment structure so that doctors weren't doing it for, you know, for free, especially family doctors, and the visits that they could do by telehealth, they're getting fairly paid for. And so as specialists, they've had a fee code where I could do a televisit, and it was really well organized before, and during COVID, it's just sort of become so like widely used, and I'm still widely using it. Like all of the patients that are from the north that need service that I can provide in Prince George, they're getting like oftentimes a telehealth visit unless they need a face-to-face visit for a biopsy to rule out cancer, or if I need another reason to examine them.
It's also a profession in transition, right? A new reality. Dr. Robin, it was my pleasure in talking to you, and I believe this is very helpful for the public at large from far and wide. You know, we have usually about close to 40,000 people watching to get to know a bit more about your profession and your very, very interesting career, you know, from the time that you developed the dream and the passion and obviously brought it to, you know, this very, very successful doc in Prince George.